Well, it's time for another edition of Dashing Dan's Sporting Adventures podcast. You can get on Spotify and all relevant social media platforms. And every Monday we do View from the Outer, looking at the previous round of the AFL. And, of course, we've just had round 22. Carlton on fire. Melbourne also going brilliantly. The Bulldogs no good. North Melbourne very good. Brisbane returned to form. Hawthorn had a shocker. Collingwood won again, missing a number of key players. And Adelaide somehow beat Richmond, but very unimpressively, while Sydney put on a good show against Port Adelaide. We'll get to all that very, very shortly. We'll welcome a very special guest as well. Can't wait for this. But we're here for the Sporto Family Restaurants, where Italy comes alive on a plate. Portion from Nonna's Kitchen, made with Southern Soul. And you can Italian food in the world, in my humble opinion. All their ingredients coming from Italy. Williamstown, Yarraville, Essendon, the Kiosk at Williamstown Beach. Gelato to Sporto and Bottega to Sporto, and our guests would know their restaurant in Essendon right across the road from the famous Windy Hill. And our guest tonight, even though most guests are not really in the media, has got a minor role, well, a minor major role in the media. He knows what I mean. He's involved with Finey's Final Siren on a Friday night on SEN. He runs a magnificent deli called Lenny's Fine Foods in St Kilda. And we'll talk about that at Inkerman Street, St Kilda. And also, he's a passionate, as mad a St Kilda supporter as I've ever met in my life. And he is on part of Saints Radio for the back end of this season. Mark Fine, welcome to the program. Good to have you with us.
Great to be on, Dan. Slight correction. It is Inkerman Road, but it's up the other end. It's in North Caulfield, 636. But that's fine. People will be able to work it out by the name, Lenny's. We actually took over the business. It's been there for 30-odd years, and the previous owner, a good mate of mine actually, his name is Lenny, but when we took it over, people thought I named it after my favourite saint of all time, Lenny Hayes. So it was a win-win.
And how's it going? I mean, you obviously were heavily involved in the media. You took a step back. Have you found that it's everything you thought it would be, being in the hospitality industry?
Oh, it's a really good business. We built it up. We renovated it. I've always enjoyed being in the kitchen, but now I'm there 5 days a week, so I'm sort of the motor behind, under the engine that keeps the fridges, freezers stocked. Not just me, because it's a huge offering, but my wife's a magnificent performer. She runs all of the ordering, all of the accounts and front of house, and we've got 7 staff, so it's a great business. But they warned me when I got into food. They said, "Are you ready to work hard?" And I got to tell you, working in the media, even though I was on 6 hours a night back in the day on SEN, 6 days a week, was a walk in the park compared to running a food business. It is the ocean. The tide will never stop coming in. You know, you get the work done, very happily it gets sold, and that just means you've got to pull up the socks and go again the next day.
And the most important thing is obviously repeat customers. If you get plenty of those, and with a great name like yours, Finey, I'm sure they're just lining up outside the door all the way down Inkerman Street into St Kilda.
Well, I'll tell you this, I've got a lot of customers that come in want to talk footy, but I've got them well trained because none of them wanted to talk footy yesterday. You know, none of them came in this morning to talk footy because they knew I wasn't in the talking mood.
Now, of course, you do have Finey's Final Siren, it's back. Would it be fair to say Mark Fine is slightly less temperamental on the Final Siren, and in those days you were very entertaining, Finey? Is it true or is that false?
100% correct. I have mellowed, not under any instructions, by the way. It's not like Huxley or any of the management there told me to tone it down, but I guess with age you do mellow a bit. And also, I mean, people loved the interaction, but quite honestly, by the end of it, I got a fair bit of respect just for the fan that wanted to talk football, and that's who I want to talk. That's who I love having on the program. They're genuine footy fans wanting to talk footy. I still get whackers sending through texts that you wouldn't read out aloud or you wouldn't want your mother to see. But I used to bite. They really used to get under my skin, and I couldn't help but react to them. And now I learned an expression between my two stints on radio, and I really like this expression. Don't let them live in your head rent-free. And I don't. I just get on with the business.
Correct. I like that expression. I like that expression as well. I mean, I think Luke Beveridge last year allowed Kane Corns to live rent-free in his head. At the end of the day, we know what this industry is like, Finey. If you've got an opinion, you're allowed to have an opinion. Opinions are like backsides. We've all got one. Now, you're involved with Saints Radio. It's great that that's been brought in. I would think Hutchie will eventually have every club have their own coach sometime down the track, and they'll be as biased as they need to be. How much are you enjoying that?
Would have enjoyed it. We started last week against the Sydney Swans and backed up against Carlton. It's hard to do when you're not playing well. So for the first 3 quarters against the Swans, St Kilda were playing a great brand of footy, and it was so much fun. And you've got to change gear when you start losing. And unfortunately, against Carlton, a lot of the gas was taken out of the broadcast. The air went out of the balloon when Naz grabbed for that hamstring. You know, I think every St Kilda supporter's hearts fell. You know, and we had to regroup. But we came back pretty hard and had a lot of fun. And I was getting stuck into Carlton. I know we weren't winning, but I found a victim out there. He was a former Bulldog, Lewis Young. I said the only time I was happy for the entire evening, I felt comfortable and happy was when he was having a shot at goal.
Yes, he was one from the Bulldogs that a lot of their supporters used to have a crack at. Not sure why he's in that Carlton side. We'll get to that in a second, but he is there. I thought your great line, I heard it today on SEN, was after Naz went down, you said, and only you finally would get away with it. Kemp, I hope you miss it in regard to the shot at goal. I thought it was gold. You just came in with that straight after Naz had gone down. Incredible.
Well, they won't play. I'm pretty sure I can say it on the broadcast, on the podcast. I said it on the broadcast. So they won't replay, I think, my finest moment last night. And it was after Mason Wood went on. And, you know, again, we were pretty flat when we found out Mason Wood was out for the game. And I came on and I said, you know, the moment the Saints lost Wood, I lost Wood.
Only you would get away with that, Piney. I don't think anyone else would, even on the bias call of whether it be Saints radio or Blues radio. Tell me about the feeling when Naz went down. And is that a concern that when Naz went down, I mean, even Donners himself, who was calling the action, he was obviously flat. Is there too much of a reliance on Naz at St Kilda at the moment?
You know, we played a few games. Naz was injured mid-season, and St Kilda actually played all right when Naz wasn't playing. We put in a really good shift against Fremantle and against Gold Coast. But when it happened mid-game, and it was very early when I say mid-game, but after the first bounce, and we're talking 10 minutes into the game, I was really disappointed that you could almost feel the players drop their heads. I have a strong sense that we went into that game with some players under an injury cloud. I know we did. I know TDK probably shouldn't have played, and Garcia was very sore, and he had much less game time and much less time in the middle than he's had in recent weeks where he's been a real success. You need to handle adversity. And when there's a spot in the finals, albeit 10th on the ladder, you'd expect more from any team. It was very disappointing. So is there a huge reliance on Naz? Of course, because St Kilda is not laced with A graders, and he's A+. But it's disappointing that the whole game plan went out the window. The will to run the ball, the will to take the corridor on. There was no dare, no adventure. And it seems as though all of that is Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera. And that's not going to get you very far in football, because we know we went down to Geelong 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that was a very big game for the club. Geelong had lost a few games in a row, and there was a real sense that St Kilda could take Geelong on. Well, on that night, Asheen Mullen played on Naz and completely nullified him. And again, St Kilda had lost all their dare and all of their creativity. So in a long-winded way, I've answered your question in the affirmative, Dan.
Do you think you got the right players for all the money you spent? I'm not sure that De Koning and also Marshall can operate in the same team effectively together.
Yeah, look, they won't have to for very long. When it's worked, it works quite well. So, and teams are playing 2 ruckmen. So why not have 2 good ruckmen? There's, you have a look at Fremantle. They've got the option between the 3 ruckmen. They've gone for Mason Cox alongside Jackson at the moment, but Darcy stands in the wings. A lot of teams have decided with 23 no sub to go with the extra ruckman, and I feel that it can work. Ultimately, St Kilda will promote Alex Dodson, who's a young, very promising ruckman, had a couple of games last year from the VFL. So whether Marshall has one more year or this is his last year, that's okay. And TDK is the right type of ruckman to get. Now, I'm not going to go into the minutiae of, well, it's not minutiae, but it's into the discussion of whether he's worth the money we're paying him. St Kilda were a lowly team on the ladder and had to fork out big money to move the needle. It's very hard to attract players to a side that doesn't have an arc that players see taking them into finals and grand finals. The only other way you can do it is by splashing some money. Now, TDK's the right sort of ruckman. He leaps, he wins centre bounces. He's got a fair bit to work on to round out his game, but it's all there. And I can tell you, he got injured against Sydney, and for the first 3 quarters, before he got injured, he led Grundy a merry dance, and we were winning. So I can see the upside with TDK. Flanders may have been an overspend, given that he came to bolster our midfield, and by the time he did his Achilles, he was back on a half-back flank. I'm not sure about that judgment call. Silvani's been a fantastic pickup. He'll be top 5 best and fairest, no worries. And Liam Ryan's been a really good pickup and a good value pickup. I was saying Liam Ryan's been great. He was charged with the job last night of a gormless St Kilda. Our only way forward was to bomb it in the air, hoping for Liam Ryan to take 2 or 3 marks of the season. It was impossible, but he competes hard. He's kicked enough goals, so I'm happy with Liam Ryan. I said this to a mate on the way home. If Liam Ryan had been picked up by Melbourne, not St Kilda, the way they move the ball, the way they can isolate forwards and create some panic whenever Pickett gets the ball or a couple of others run out of the middle with it, he would be having an amazing season. So, yeah, I've got no problems with Ryan. I've got no problems that we went out and spent some money. As I said, you can, die on the cross doing what you were doing because we weren't going anywhere, or you can have a crack. Now, it hasn't worked out this year, but I still believe at full strength, and that's a big if for St Kilda because it includes Max King, and that might be just, cuckoo fairyland stuff, but at full strength, we can put a good team out there.
Do you expect Max King to come back next year, Finey? And do you expect Marshall to be there, or do you think he might be traded? Because I know the Bulldogs are interested, and Geelong are always interested in a ruckman, and my understanding is that they're very keen on Tim English, who's fallen out with Luke Beveridge, making it a viable option for the Bulldogs to get Marshall. But Max King's the one you need, isn't he? But just can't get fit.
Well, it's just an ongoing saga. They're going to give him a full pre-season next year. And quite honestly, if his body fails again, then St Kilda have to look in concert with Max because he's got a long-term contract about paying out the contract and going to the AFL and saying that we've paid out the contract because his body can't stand up to AFL football and clear that money off the books. But they'll give him another crack next year. My understanding is, well, he had knee injuries for the best part of 18 to 20 months. And as soon as he got over those, he got soft tissue injuries with calf and hamstring, that the knee is structurally sound and the rest is repairable. But if he was a motor car, Dan, you'd be trading him in. And unfortunately, you would. And the used car dealership would have a look under the hood and say, mate, I'm not giving you a heck of a lot.
No, I agree with that. I just don't. I think maybe a change of scenery would help. But then again, he might just have one of those bodies that just can't get through an AFL game anymore.
Yeah, well, that's right. And you couldn't pick up any. he'd have no currency whatsoever. As far as Marshall is concerned, I would love, if Tim English went to Geelong, I'd love St Kilda to deal with the Western Bulldogs because, mate, if Tim English goes to Geelong, you will learn in short order the Geelong Football Club like wooing players, but they don't like paying for players in terms of trade or draft picks. They were. I actually think they really did the wrong thing by Rowan Marshall. They seduced him. They offered him the number one ruck position in a side that clearly can have a crack at the premiership. So, of course, Marshall would be interested in it. But if you're going to go and talk to a player, talk to his manager and convince him to come, you are showing him scant respect by throwing up pick number 24 in the draft, no more offered, no more to be discussed. You want a player, then show you're committed to getting him. Like Sydney were with Curnow. They bent backwards to get Curnow and they got him. Hawthorn didn't get Merritt, but I don't know if they had a fair crack, but they had some sort of a crack. And Geelong just think, we're a destination club, but they don't realise if it's a contracted player, boys, you've got to pay up. So good luck dealing Tim English to them because they will, the first thing they said to St Kilda is no players in the discussion. Well, Geelong, last year's draft was heavily compromised with academy picks and a father-son selection, and it was in their pick as runners-up was 23 or 24. I mean, no thanks.
What do you think if the Bulldogs had have got Callum Wilkie? And my understanding is they got pretty close, they had a decent crack at him. What do you think if it had have got that far and he said, look, I want to go to the Bulldogs, what do you think they would have had to have given St Kilda? Top 5 pick? Top 10 pick, at least?
Oh, St Kilda wouldn't have dealed him for a single draft pick. Coming into, as we stand here now, St Kilda have got 2 All-Australians in this year's team, Naz and Callum Wilkie.
Yes.
St Kilda's not blessed with tall defenders. He's not tall, but he plays tall. St Kilda simply were never going to deal him. He was a contracted player. So he would have liked to go to the Bulldogs. And I can tell you, if he would have gone to the Bulldogs and Darcy wouldn't have gone down, you see, things change very quickly with injuries and clubs have to be resilient. You can, we will talk about teams tonight. Fremantle, well, they've had a very good run with injuries, not perfect. We'll talk about Carlton, who apart from Wiedering, have had a magnificent run with injuries this year. So Bulldogs were shredded, after 4 rounds, they were the premiership favourites and they got shredded with injuries and have not recovered since. But at full strength with Callum Wilkie, they would have been an absolute premiership contender.
Yeah, they certainly would have been. That's why they had a decent crack. Mark Fine is my guest tonight from Finey's Final Siren and Lenny's Fine Foods in Inkerman Street, Caulfield North, or North Caulfield. I've got it right this time, Finey. Some of the best food you're ever likely to get. As you would at the Sporto, Italy comes alive on a plate. You can dine in, take away, group bookings, functions and catering as well. Come and join our family. The best way to enjoy the Sporto is together. Well, let's start with the Blues because you saw them firsthand last night. And they have 19 players on their list that are from other clubs. But now that they've got it right under Josh Fraser, it's a pretty good list. I mean, the guys they got from Sydney for Curnow in Haywood and Florent, I couldn't understand why Sydney would let them go. We know Ainsworth can play. We know Chera can play. Nick Haynes has been a good pickup. Young, not so much. Frankie Evans, well, he's just come on in leaps and bounds. And their kids are good too. I mean, they are absolutely flying, aren't they, Finey?
Frankie Evans was the best of them last night. He was fantastic. He's, even in a struggling team, he was courageous and willing to put his body on the line. But last night he was so mobile. We knew him, I think when he went to Carlton, he was a sort of stay-at-home forward pocket trying to feed scraps off what was left after the big contest had gone up in the goal square. But he was roaming far and wide and played 2 or 3 opponents on a break. Chera I'm still not convinced about. His body's probably let him down. The others, Florence, what's been amazing, incredible, has been the improvement in Carlton's ball use, delivery, foot skills in the last, well, we'll call it under Josh Fraser, because it is under Josh Fraser, but I'm sure he hasn't gone and physically improved them. It just shows what confidence does and putting the ball in the right people's hands. They were playing Adam Sard off the half-back flank, and that was going nowhere. Too many bounces and terrible disposal. They've now got Florent and Billy Wilson, and Wilson's a dashing defender. Again, not a super user, but not bad. But that Florent uses the ball really well. Hayward's, he takes his opportunities. He's a great kick at goal. Everything's just going beautifully for them. Walsh is being used really smartly by Josh Fraser, not overused in terms of he's not left on the ground for the entire quarter, because we know that he's always had back problems. And he's got fantastic breakaway speed, and that should not be dulled by overplaying him for match time. If you can play him for 70% of the game, which is, I think, what Fraser likes doing, you will have a dynamic midfielder for 70% of the game rather than 90% of the game and dull his dash. So he's being used really well. And Pitnet rucked well last night. They've got the boy Kieran Byrne. People have asked, I'm interested in your opinion, was Voss that bad? Is Fraser that good? And were they not playing for Voss? It's not that they weren't playing for Voss, Dan. It's maybe they cared too much. The weight of the world was on Michael Voss. He would stand on the boundary line looking every bit the deer in the headlights. Players had come on and off the interchange and see their coach under pressure. And they were buying into his story of survival. As for the kids, the likes of Byrne and Wilson, well, they knew if they got a game, if they didn't perform, they'd be dropped. And that merry-go-round, that sort of revolving door is terrible for a young player. Fraser comes in and says, don't worry about the ladder position. Billy, Kieran, Cooper Lord, you're in the team. And you're in maybe for the rest of the year. Find your way in league football. Well, what a difference that's made to those youngsters.
He's just taken the pressure off them, finally, hasn't he? I mean, as you said, taking the pressure off someone doesn't mean that you gain skills. It just might mean that you find them on a more regular basis. And I mean, he's played down whether he wants the job or not. I dare say he wants the job now. He's today, and we wish him and the family all best. Just said goodbye to his father at his father's funeral today. So now he can concentrate if he wants the job on the job. And I think that he'll get it because he's done a great job with this team. But it's all been about process driven, which has driven me mad, that phrase. But what he's done has been 100% right because he's got them all playing for him and he's got them enjoying their footy and he's managed to get the best out of what I reckon is a pretty good list.
Yeah, it was never a bad list. It was reliant, as you say, on a number of imports, and what they've got going for them is an injection of youth, and I'm not talking about the three previously mentioned. They're good kids, sure, but they'll find their way in football. They've got a couple of stars out there in Jagger Smith and Harry Dean, with Cody Walker to join. And every player on that list, or the senior players, would know, well, if I can lift, if I can hang around for a few years, I can enjoy some success because we've got top-end talent coming into the side. And you've seen it doesn't take a lot of top-end talent to move the needle at a club, as long as the club's not down and out like Essendon or West Coast has been. Even Richmond, they cleared out so many players. You could bring in youngsters, but it's going to take a long time. Look at the difference Murphy Reid has made to Fremantle. Fremantle were a middle-of-the-table side, and it's an enormous difference. So Carlton, whatever they do for the rest of the season, they'll play in the playoffs. I don't expect them to go too far, but the finals, I hate that term playoffs. Don't know why I said it. They know that we add another really good kid next year And second year, effectively for Javis Smith, it's the first year with knee injury. Second year for Harry Dean. The graph is heading in the right direction.
So you don't think they can go that far in the finals? I mean, there's a very good chance they'll play Collingwood in the first week, which will be a dream for the AFL, which actually knows under the pump a bit at the moment and has been under the pump with some pretty bad decisions all year. But imagine Collingwood Carlton with the wildcard, which people have been pretty sceptical about. That'd just be huge, wouldn't it, to kick off the finals campaign?
Oh, it couldn't be any bigger. People can talk about derbies and they can talk about showdowns and they can talk about Q clashes or pineapple derbies and harbour, whatever. Call me old-fashioned, Dan. Give me a Carlton-Collingwood clash and I'll give you 100,000. A Carlton-Collingwood clash that means something. I'll give you 100,000 at the MCG, but 100,000 baying for blood. It'd be great. They could win in the first week of the finals, but it will get immensely harder from then on. And we know that there are teams in the top three and then top four and top six who will be hosting finals. And Carlton's not ready yet to go to Brisbane or Sydney or Fremantle and win a finals game. Those teams, Fremantle are in a holding pattern. Brisbane and Sydney have both shown in the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, what they can produce on the back of poor form. They've got gears. So, Carlton, their fans should be delighted with 2 things. One, that they've been able to pull out of the absolute ashes the season. And 2, courtesy of a top 10, yeah, many were sceptical, including myself, but it's worked because it's kept the season alive longer. They're going to play some finals football, and we talked about their youngsters. You get many, many months of learning in a finals game that you don't get in a home and away game at the end of the season.
This is View from the Outer as part of Dashing Dan Sporting Podcast. You can get it on Spotify and all social media outlets for the Sporto family restaurants and Lenny Fine Foods with Mark Fine, who operates and owns Lenny's Fine Foods, and also, of course, has the Finey's Final Siren and SDN. He's on Saints Radio as well, being a mad keen, one of the maddest and keenest football supporters I know, joining me on the program tonight. Now, I wanted to ask you about Hawthorn, Finey. Where do you think they are? I'm not 100% convinced about the Hawks. I know they've got a coach, but have they been papering over the cracks with some of their results last week against North, but then they were absolutely blown apart by Brisbane to indicate that maybe all's not quite right at the Hawks?
Yeah, they rely very heavily on their frontline midfielders playing well. So they've got a midfield of 4 guys. And actually, in the loss to Brisbane, the 2 ranked 3rd and 4th in that lineup. I speak of Josh Ward and Cam Mackenzie. Ward was very good. Mackenzie was pretty good. But they just don't have any midfield depth. And when Will Day and Newcombe are well held, Newcomb's always going to get possessions, but you can dull his effectiveness by making sure that he's not streaming out of the middle. And Will Day, the only way you can stop him is actually stop him getting the ball, because once he gets it, he's got great, deceptively fast is Will Day. So if they're not getting the ball effectively, that Hawthorn team comes back to the field very quickly, doesn't it? A forward line that is, what's a good word? Enigmatic. When you've got Gunston's been outstanding, but he's not against the top teams. He's not going to get those leading lanes that he's been afforded against some of the sides this year. They're going to just shut him down. And he's great. Look, he's a beautiful kick and he's still very smart on the lead, but that's it. Mabior Chol can pluck a great mark, but you're rolling the dice with him. And Mitch Lewis is down on confidence and seems to be heading, he's wandering further afield trying to get a kick. I'm sure that sometimes he's required to be the hit-up target, but other times he's on a long leash and going nowhere. So that's a huge reliance on Nick Watson. Normally delivers, but can't be expected to all the time. And Ginnivan is, again, the difference between their forward line individually, their best and worst, makes it very hard to rely on them.
So do they deserve to be a premiership contender, or do you still feel they're a little bit off the pace?
Dan, I hate saying this, but there's a feeling in the football world, and maybe somewhere deep down in me, that at the end of the day, St Kilda is always going to stuff it up. And just as there's that feeling, there's this sort of reverse to the coin that somehow, at the end of the day, Hawthorn will triumph. They've been so good at getting to the top and then converting it. Their premiership win over Geelong was a surprise. The three-peat they completed comfortably. They had some soft grand finals in it, but they munched through the competition. In our lifetime, Dan, they've been the eminent football side.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the faith in Hawthorn is this inbuilt sort of setting that we have as football fans that Hawthorn will come out on top. Because I'm telling you, if that side went around in other jumpers, you would not consider them a premiership contender.
It's just something about their culture. I mean, being a Western Bulldogs supporter, I know how you feel, Finey. We have won one, and that was 2016. And I think if the bye's not in, they don't get close. And you've got to have luck to win a premiership, and they had luck in the finals to win a premiership. But I know exactly how you feel. If the Dogs are in a position to do something, they always stuff it up as well. And I always look back and say that, unfortunately, the Bulldogs and St Kilda are mired in a culture of mediocrity and always have been. Essendon and Carlton, their troubles of the last 20 years or so, and I'm interested in your view on this, is caused by the fact that they're victims of their own success back in the late 20th centuries. And Hawthorn and Geelong, well, they've just learned how to have success, haven't they?
You've hit the nail on the head. So we've discussed St Kilda and Footscray. We're not going to break each other's hearts by going back over that. Essendon and Carlton, they pay the price for hubris and for a long-held belief that ultimately, whatever the system requires, they can circumvent the system and all will end up roses, because they had for 100 years been able to rise to the top, whether it was financial advantage, geographical advantage, an understanding of the recruiting market, being able to go to the West and South Australia and get the best players because they wanted to play with these two great clubs. But they held on to that for way too long. Carlton in particular was the last team to accept that the only way forward is through drafting and being respectful of the young talent pathways. They had a Messiah complex, and they did it with Chris Judd. They did it ridiculously with coaches Malthouse and Pagan, and they paid the price. And Essendon similarly drank their own bathwater for way too long. You know, I'm not going into the drug saga. I believe it was an unfortunate, and the Essendon Football Club should not be held to account for that. That's not their culture, and it was just a very unfortunate set of circumstances that aligned to conspire against them. But the appointment of Hurd at that time as a coach who left the game and went into the world of corporate business, the idea that we can just go back and our champions will lead us out of the mire, it's wrong. They didn't look around and see other clubs bringing in the best talent from around the country. They reverted to Hurd and Bomber Thompson. And as I said, nothing got to do with what happened off-field. It was just the wrong move, and it was a belief that, you know, Essendon greats, we're great, Essendon greats will take us back to where we belong. Well, that's not how it works, boys.
So are you against James Hurd getting the job? I mean, I feel that they probably need to give him the job for at least 2 years Otherwise, the aura of James Hird hovers over his replacement, even if it might be his great mate and ex-teammate, Mark McVeigh. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think Mark McVeigh should get the job only because, again, James Hird does not have the resume of an AFL coach in between the time that he stopped coaching Essendon and today. What's his involvement with the game been? He does some coaching at Port Melbourne. He hasn't worked at the coalface. He's not a senior assistant coach at an AFL club. That's what's required. Why would Essendon look any further than to what's happened at Melbourne? Melbourne went out, did their due diligence, and chose the player in the system that they believed was the best placed to take over an AFL club. That man, Stephen King, has been a wonder. Even Josh Fraser at Carlton, he didn't step in from a VFL club or taking a break from the game. He was heavily involved at assistant coach level. This game is way too complex now to think that you can be a sideline watcher of at the highest level and be able to take over an AFL club.
Yeah, it makes it pretty tough, doesn't it? I mean, you look at Stephen King, and he did the perfect apprenticeship. I've always been a big believer, Finey, and Mark Fine has joined me for Dashing Dan Sporting Adventures, view from the outer, looking at round 22 of the AFL for the Sporto Family Restaurants. You can find them in Williamstown, Yarraville, Essendon, the Kiosk at Williamstown Beach, Gelato to Sporto, and Bottega to Sporto, a bar at Yarraville. Stephen King, to me, did the ideal apprenticeship. He started at St Kilda after he retired as a player. He then had a long stint at the Bulldogs, which included the premiership and a grand final appearance. He went to the Gold Coast and was interim coach when Stewie Dew got sacked, and then went back to Geelong. That, to me, is the perfect apprenticeship for someone who wants to be a senior coach. He had an opportunity to go to two clubs he didn't play with and learn more about himself and learn more about how the game is played elsewhere.
Dan, if you got an independent recruiter to fill a senior position at a company, they would be looking at a resume that has broad experience at the top level in that industry and success. And he ticked those boxes. You are 100% correct. It is broad. It's a range of clubs. There's a premiership involved there. There's clubs that built up from the bottom, built up with a young list, and then exposure back at Geelong, as you said previously with Hawthorn, the most successful club of the modern era. So you bet that gets boxes ticked. Now, James Hird can't tick any of those boxes. So it's nothing against James whatsoever. Even Nathan Buckley. Look, Nathan Buckley was very serious about going for the Tasmanian job. So what did he do? Took on an assistant coach's role at Geelong to once again be at the coalface. If James Hird is serious about wanting to coach, and I don't know how serious he is, and if the club is serious about him wanting to coach, then set him free. James has had no experience outside of the Essendon Football Club. Set him free, see him do some time at another club. I imagine he'd be able to get a position at another club. A club like Sydney with long-standing success. Then you could, with some confidence, appoint him because the emotional pull would be fantastic. The fans would love it. The players would rally around it. There's no question that emotionally he does tick boxes, but practically he doesn't.
I mean, even Luke Beveridge did a pretty good apprenticeship, didn't he? I mean, he won three flags in a row and got them up from C grade, B grade and A grade. We're talking, of course, of St Bede's.
St Bede's, yep.
Yeah, he did a great job there. And then he went to Hawthorn and then to Collingwood, or it might have been the other way around, and then had a year out where he went back to the tax office in a high-profile position where I suppose that's all about managing people, which is what a coach's job is. I think he's been too long at the Bulldogs, but he's another one that did the ideal apprenticeship too, didn't he, Fine?
He did. He was highly regarded at Hawthorn. I think it was Collingwood Hawthorn in that order. Yeah. And St Kilda were very keen to have him as part of their coaching panel. These players, like Ken Hinkley, when he was appointed at Port Adelaide, had done years of work at other clubs. And people might say that he didn't get the ultimate success. Well, they don't need to say it because it's true. But hugely respected and lands the Tasmanian job on the back of the reputation he built at Port Adelaide. Andrew McWalter, not a left field choice, given the high regard he was held in at Richmond. So the industry knows itself from within, and the recent coaching appointees have all been touted. Adam Kingsley, another one. Fagan, before, when he went to Brisbane, never played at the highest level, was not young, but boy, was he highly regarded. So nobody in the industry can tell you anything about James Hird because nobody outside Essendon has ever seen him coach at a senior level. And it's, again, not the right choice. But Essendon, well, Andrew Welsh came into that club, and one of his greatest challenges, this is a man with enormous success in the business world, has to separate himself from being used to succeed by what decisions he made in the business world, and also separate himself from the emotional ties he has to players that he played with and have a more global view of his club.
Yeah, certainly agree with that. Just on Melbourne, we touched on Stephen King. It is a breath of fresh air, isn't it? The way they're playing. I mean, he just keeps telling them, take it on, take it on, take it on. Freo were getting on top on a couple of occasions on the weekend. Melbourne could have gone into their shell and been more defensive, but that's not Stephen King and Melbourne's go this year, is it? It's just keep attacking, it'll turn. And my God, did it turn again for them at the MCG? What a performance that was.
Best game of the year so far, probably. I've heard that. I watched the game in full and I agree with that. Huge self-belief. They had a very, very important player come back into that team. As good as they've been, without Daniel Turner in the back line has, some issues. I don't want to get stuck into Tom McDonald because he's been a really good servant, but he can't be expected to be the best or most experienced key defender there. But when Turner returned to the team, that defence looked much better. Harrison Petty, that was a great last quarter to watch. He started the quarter kicking a great goal and got Melbourne within a kick, I think, and then almost immediately gave away a disappointing 50-metre penalty to Nathan O'Driscoll and cost his team a goal. And he was so upset with himself, some players would have chucked in the towel. He steeled himself and went on to basically win the game for Melbourne with a couple of great grabs in the last quarter. They're great to watch because the brand of football they play does not change regardless of opponent or scoreboard. Hasn't worked every game, but we now see that when it works, it can actually beat anybody. So they're a real joker in the pack come finals time.
So how far can they go, knowing that they play the MCG so well and have dropped just one game there this year? And you don't need to be Einstein to know that all the big games in the finals are played at the MCG in Melbourne.
I don't think they can go all the way, again, because of sort of depth issues and maybe their bottom six is still going to be found out. Why would there be a ceiling? I love that year, 2016, when the Bulldogs won the flag. The mantra at the club was, why not us? Now, why wouldn't they be saying exactly the same at Melbourne? They can turn around and say, this has been a great season, whatever happens. So why not us? Let's just enjoy the rest of the season. We're going to play finals in front of big crowds on the MCG. There are kids in this team who never would have thought they'd be playing high-profile football in front of massive crowds. I mean, take Harry Sharp, for example, cast off by Brisbane, very much a bit-part player under Simon Goodwin, and almost kicks the winning goal off the ground on the weekend, but is just loving life. He's out there every week playing an important role. He's playing out of his skin. And, as I said, maybe the bottom six holds them back, but if the bottom six includes the likes of Harry Sharp, then maybe I'm wrong.
And we all thought that the backside would fall out of them this year under Stephen King because he'd have to rebuild, losing Oliver and Petrarca. Viney hasn't played, may not play again because of injuries. Stephen May left as well, but they have not missed those players at all, have they?
No, they haven't. And for various reasons, they're better off for it. They're better off for it because there was, I'm willing to say it, Petrarca is a selfish footballer or has became a selfish footballer. He wasn't always, but he became a very self-centred footballer, and he seems to have taken that with him to the Gold Coast. Clayton Oliver has been very good for GWS, and believe me, they'd be even better off if they got the version of Clayton Oliver that GWS have got. But they didn't have that version. They had a troubled, problematic footballer that would have been taking up a lot of energy off field in terms of what's he up to, what's going on, we got problems here, is this going to blow up in our face, etc. Viney's just an unlucky story, so bad luck for him that they've been able to cover that. And Stephen May is in the sort of Clayton Oliver boat of we don't need to have to worry about what's going to be on the front page of the newspaper, do we? And the best way to guarantee that we don't is by moving players on.
Jack Steele went from St Kilda to Melbourne. How did you feel about that? He's been great for the Demons.
Yeah, I'm rapt for him. Really pleased for him. And I've got no problems. St Kilda have to rebuild a midfield, and him not being in the midfield has afforded opportunities to Hall and Garcia that might not have been there. St Kilda were hamstrung a bit because they were contractually, or we are contractually committed to McRae, who's done and dusted, and you couldn't play McRae and Steele in the same team, to be honest. You just couldn't. Now, as it happens, McRae doesn't make the team, and Steele would have made the team, but it cleared salary cap space, which St Kilda had tightened considerably because of their big spending, and that space that St Kilda needs. They have used it to re-secure Darcy Wilson, and will need some of that money to keep other players at the club. So I'm really happy because Jack Steele was loved at St Kilda, great bloke. He's had a very good year with Melbourne, and I'll tell you what, he must love being at the centre bounces underneath the great Max Gawn. That is that is silver service, and Jack Steele hasn't let him down with what he's done with it.
We're a lot of great ruckmen in our lifetime, finally. We're of a similar age, and Gary Dempsey, Len Thompson, Scotty Wind. There have been some great ruckmen over the years who've served their clubs well. Peter Crackers-Keane was a very good ruckman. Mark Lee. Where does Max Gawn sit amongst all those?
He's second to no one. I have him equal with Simon Madden. Simon Madden, the better footballer. See, Simon Madden's one of the greatest. He'd been the top 5 players I've ever seen. I'm sort of interested when men of our age, or not men, fans of our age, talk about the best players they've seen. We tend to revert back to some of the players from our youth. And Madden's not often in the top 3 or top 5. How many goals did he kick? Over 600. Maybe around 700.
Yes. Or just under, I think, just under. I'll double check that. Yeah. But you're right. He started as a forward, didn't he? There were games he kicked 5 or 7 goals, and you couldn't have him and his brother in the same team. Crack was in the team for a little while, and Simon was playing forward in the late 70s, early 80s. And then eventually Sheedy decided, well, he's a better ruckman. I'll play Paul Salmon forward, and Madden can go in the ruck. And that's when they had their halcyon years, didn't they?
The best ruck and rover combination I have ever seen in football was Simon Madden and Dale Waitman, and we got treated to that in state football. The quality of his ruck work and the reading of it by Dale Waitman, of course, Waitman a Tiger, Madden a Bomber, but when they got together wearing the big V, that was Rolls-Royce football. Yeah, I loved Simon Madden. And Max Gawn, whilst he will never, in the way the modern game is played, be able to amass great tallies of goals, and nor would he, because he's always going to be a ruckman first and foremost. His will to win and ability to lift his team over the line, he has carried Melbourne to more victories than any player of the current era has done for their clubs, with the exception of Dustin Martin. So if you're looking at two players that have single-handedly taken their side over the line for the 4 points, it's Martin and Gawn. And believe me, Martin is right up there in my top 5 of all time as well. So speaks volumes of what I think for Max think of Max Gawn.
He's a 6-time VFL Team of the Year, Simon Madden, 3-time All-Australian, 4-time Essendon best and fairest, 3-time Essendon leading goal kicker, and he kicked 575 goals in 378 games, Finey, and he was a leading goal kicker in his last full year of senior footy in 1991. He mostly played in the reserves and played in that reserves premiership with also the retiring Terry Danner and Des Pagan. Can I ask you about the Cats? Now, they're interesting off the field. They're interesting on the field. Do you think there's a bit of hubris? You mentioned that word, great word, about how they operate, thinking that they're a little bit better than everyone else and they can get away with controversial situations like the wavering document regarding concussions?
Yeah, I am surprised that any club would do it, including Geelong. We are in a different. We now understand the long-term dangers to a player regarding head injuries, and this has been known for over a decade now. When I hear the tragic stories of some of the players of years gone by, I have enormous sympathy for them. I mean, we are talking about people taking their own lives. We are talking about lives immeasurably handicapped by the ongoing trauma of brain injuries. But there's to look back retrospectively and say that the game did the wrong thing by these players, because we know that these guys would get head knocks and get sent straight back on. We simply didn't know then what we do now. But we know now what we do now. That might sound like an oxymoron, but it must need to be explained to the Geelong Football Club. They have placed their own financial welfare, their liability in the situation, ahead of their care for a young man at their club. And this, it just reeks to me of, we put it in the hands of our lawyers and this is what they came up with. Well, guys, you're talking about somebody that's part of your football family. And we know clubs go out of their way now to make the environment inclusive and safe, and they wrap their arms around players, may it be for mental health issues, may it be for drug issues. But there still seems to be a miss in the machine when it comes to a genuine duty of care and understanding that sometimes we've just got to say to a player, and we know, look, we understand that Jake wants to play football. Everybody, all these guys want to play football, and not just at the highest level. Football is a big part of people's lives at amateur clubs all around the country. But sometimes you have to step in and say to those people, we now know things that mean that you can't play. We love you and we know it's going to leave a hole in your life. You know, these AFL clubs, it's so much more than a workplace or a sporting club. It is their life, it's their family, it's their social life. Their partners interact with other players' partners. They travel together. They spend their end of season trips together. And it's a huge void when it ends. And when it ends prematurely, if a player can do something to stop that, they will. But you just can't ask that question of a player. You put that in front of any player and they'll probably sign it. Very few players would not extend their career if given the opportunity. But it is a... It's a very... Yep.
Sorry. Go on. I was just going to say, They haven't been transparent, have they? So the fact that they haven't been transparent, does that mean that Grant McCabe, the current president, who was a board member at the time this happened in 2024, Craig Drummond, who was the president, now the chairman of the AFL, and Stephen Hocking, the CEO of Geelong, do they all need to lose their jobs over this, or do they have to cop a massive fine in the vicinity of $1 million or more?
I don't know about losing their jobs. The lessons learned from this will mean that it will never happen again. The lack of transparency, though, means that people knew that what they were doing wasn't right. If they were completely confident and comfortable in their actions, they would have presented the contract to the AFL, and it wouldn't have been an issue because the AFL would have knocked it on the head. So they were trying to circumvent the system. Whether somebody chooses to step down over this remains to be seen. But in the end, to me, it's a cynical exercise. Why is it cynical? Because it is an exercise of no care, no responsibility, and little care. It is another player on the list that we need, and they can console themselves in the notion that, but Jake really wanted to play on, and we were just doing what we were fulfilling his wishes and looking after the club. Well, if that's not cynical, then what is? And by the way, legally, you can get people to sign all the waivers you want. You are still open to litigation if it is seen that you are responsible for whatever injuries or damages is suffered by the third party. So you can sign waivers, but I can tell you, and I've spoken to a lawyer today about it, it does not absolve you from legal action. What it does is it frightens off legal action more than prevents it. So were they bluffing in handing that to Colin Jasny? In a way, yes, but it's something that lawyers love to draw up to mitigate the damage that can be caused.
Before I let you go, Finey, and Mark Fine's been my guest on Dashing Down Sporting Adventures, View from the Outer podcast, looking at round 22 of the AFL for the Sporto family restaurants, the best Italian food you're going to get throughout Williamstown, Yarraville, Essendon, which is their restaurant across the road from Windy Hill Football Ground, the Kiosk of Williamstown Beach, Gelato to Sporto, and Bottega to Sporto, a bar in Yarraville, and Gelato to Sporto is also in Yarraville. Tex Walker pulled the pin today. What a great career it's been. In 5 years' time, how will we describe Tex Walker in regard to the Adelaide Football Club? One of those 5 players of all time?
Yeah, first of all, what a fantastic recovery of a career by Tex Walker. Because 4 years, I reckon he was close to done and dusted. He was roaming far and wide trying to get a kick. He didn't like the contested mark as much as he should have, and he was fairly fumbly, and there were a lot of rumblings. I remember, actually, about 3 years ago, there was a suggestion, that Adelaide had just about had enough of him. There were some off-field issues as well, much publicised, and that Essendon were going to pick him up for a couple of years, give him a contract and try and lean on his experience. And I thought to myself, oh, that would be right up Essendon's alley to make that mistake. Well, he stayed at Adelaide and he rebuilt his career. It's very rare that a footballer 4 years ago, if he retired, would have gone out with far lesser of a reputation than he has, having stuck it out and certainly had 3 really good seasons. So he will be remembered, loved, and one thing that they will always talk about, Adelaide supporters down at the Adelaide Oval, is when a guy takes a mark 55, 60 out, I reckon they'll turn to each other and say, Tex could have kicked that.
Yes.
Some of his
I agree with that. And the other thing too, Finey, about
to some of his kicks,
go on. Sorry, Finey. Go on.
I just loved when he strikes the ball properly. Some players, they can kick it from. I remember Anthony Rocker. He could kick a long ball, but he strained every muscle and his leg was up above his ear hole. You could really see him going for it. Tex Walker laces them 70 metres and he looks like he's chipping onto a green. I love the power he generates through timing.
Yeah, he was a magnificent player. Now, just before I let you go, are you going to be barracking hard for the Bulldogs against the Blues this week? And what chance do you give them? Because if the Bulldogs beat the Blues, and I can't see them getting anywhere near them, and you guys beat Richmond and then beat the Gold Coast, because I don't think Carlton will beat Fremantle, you get into the top 10.
No, thanks.
So you'll be barracking hard, won't you?
No, not at all.
You don't want to get in?
No, I really don't want to front up.
Why?
I don't want to front up in a final without Naz, not the way this team's going.
Yeah.
No, we had our chance on Sunday night. It fell apart through injury, but more importantly, it fell apart through the fact that the players fell apart. And no, Carlton have deserved their spot. I think they'll beat Carlton, beat your doggies. And
yes,
I wouldn't be riding if I was a bookmaker, I wouldn't be riding too many tickets on Richmond. I'd be very careful about us beating them.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt about the Bulldogs in the second half of the year with all their injuries. I mean, they were lucky to beat West Coast. It was a good win against the Gold Coast, I thought, because I could see that being a banana peel. And they weren't all that impressive against Richmond. They just beat Collingwood. They just beat Melbourne. I mean, the season's fallen away for them. One more thing, Finey, who wins the flag?
I am going for the three-peat. Yeah, look, I mean, Fremantle have been fantastic, but I spoke to Kenny Hinkley. I actually have a few little chats with Ken at the studios.
Yeah.
And
yes,
and he's a great believer. He goes, it's really difficult when a team's clear on top, because he had Port Adelaide on top of the ladder. When you know you're going to finish on top and you're sort of waiting a bit for the finals, you've gone through the whole year in one competition, that is the chase for positions on the ladder, and you're the best team, and you've got a couple of games break and you've earned that, then all of a sudden the finals start and all of that's taken away. And you're equal, you're back on a level footing. You've got no advantage. You've got to reprove yourself again. Now, one thing we know about Brisbane, they can lose a final and still win a grand final. That takes a lot of mettle. I'm not sure whether Fremantle could go through that experience and come out the other side. They did play a final at home last year, Fremantle, and it did not go well, and they should have won it. So, yeah, I'm going to tip. I'm not going to tip. I'm going to lean towards Brisbane. I think we've both. I've put a line through Hawthorn, and Sydney would need, if they got their best 23 out there, they're fine. They are a real danger. That means getting McInerney back. That means, well, they've got a couple of defenders that they have to get back in the team. I'm talking everybody, because they fall away dramatically off their best 23. And it's a race against time to do it, but if they did, they'll be in the mix as well.
Finey, I really appreciate your time. Mark Fine, who is well known, of course, for Finey's Final Siren. You can get that every Friday on SEN after the football on again this week. And we look forward to getting his views and also his listeners' views of the big game between Fremantle and the Adelaide Crows. And, of course, we've been here for Dashing Dan Sporting Adventures, view from the Outer podcast, looking at round 22 of the AFL. And we thank the Sporto family restaurants where Italy comes alive on a plate. You can find them in Williamstown, Yarraville, Essendon, the Kiosk at Williamstown Beach, the best Italian food ever, and also the Gelato di Sporto at Yarraville and Bottega di Sporto bar at Yarraville. And don't forget, you also get Finey during the week at Lenny's Fine Foods. Where do we find you, Finey?
636 Inkerman Road in North Caulfield.
Appreciate your time. Good luck for the rest of the year, and we'll catch up again soon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Italian flavors done just right. Artisan pizza and pasta too, made with amore just for you. The oven's warm, the air smells sweet, a gathering that can't be beat. Pizza the sport, take a bite. so fine, the perfect slice, a taste divine. Family recipes, old and true, crafted lovingly for you. The oven's warm, the air smells sweet, a gathering that can't be beat. Pizza the sport to take a bite, taste the joy, feel the light. Pizza the sport to share the cheer, bringing Italy right here. From Nana's hands to this place, every smile on every face, a tradition we hold dear, making memories year by year. Pizza the sport, so take a bite, taste the joy, feel the light. Pizza the sport, so share the cheer, bringing Italy right here, bringing Italy